Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange and happy Valentine's Day. In lieu of this holiday, I decided to do a Valentine's themed video. And while every other booktuber online is going to be putting out their favorite romances today, and I actually did a video like that many years ago, and well, it did horribly because apparently no one comes to my channel for the cute romantic reads. I'm just not your go-to gal. Instead, you seem to come to my channel for really messed up and dark books. So I thought it would be fun to lean into that once again and do a video all about toxic relationships because that's, let's be honest, more my speed. And I have done previous Valentine's videos like this before, so I'm gonna have them linked down in the description box and cards, so if you wanna go check those out. But basically, I want to have this video focused on what I call toxic relationships. So they're gonna be books where there is a relationship in the main part of the book. For the sake of keeping this trimmed down a little bit, I am gonna be avoiding books involving pedophilia because that's not a relationship, that's a crime. And I'm going to be avoiding books where I guess the relationship is already broken up, but ideally I want to actually have books where the relationship is happening at the current point in time and it's just going horribly wrong because the people are terrible. These are the kind of books that I tend to enjoy. I don't really love a lot of romance in my books. I don't mind some sexy times, but the actual romance isn't normally my thing. So I thought this was a fun way to talk about some of my favorite books and still celebrate the holiday. And of course, hopefully everyone is having a good day regardless of your relationship status, because let's be honest, this is basically Single Awareness Day, which is pretty insulting. So let's have some fun with it and get started. So let's talk about one of my all-time favorites, and that is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which pretty much everyone knows. This is the story of a couple, and in the story it's told over two timelines, one being the present day where the girl Amy has disappeared on their anniversary date, and so her husband Nick is the main suspect, and you find out right in the first chapter that he's lying to the police. He's not telling them everything that he knows. And then we also get a perspective back in the days when they were dating from her diary, and it recounts how they got together. Now, if you've read this book or seen the movie, you know the twist and you know why exactly this is such a toxic relationship. But even without spoiling that, just in case you don't know, I think you can agree that this couple is just really not functioning, and the fact that the husband certainly looks very guilty and is not a very likable person. And even when you go through, again, the diary entries and you actually get to see the relationship as it's leading up to the present day, they're just dysfunctional, not a happy couple, lots of problems. Maybe they shouldn't have gotten together, and you get to see the fallout of what happens when these two very toxic personalities come together in a horrible, horrible marriage. So thought this was a great place to start and definitely a good book to read today. Next, let's talk about Tender is the Flesh, which is a translated horror book that is set in a dystopian or post-apocalyptic future where animal meat has become dangerous to consume, and so in order to allow us to continue to eat meat, they have allowed the production of what they call special meat, which you learn right at the beginning of the story is actually just the production of human meat, and it's really, really gross. The story is told from the perspective of someone who works in the meat plant, and it's their job to kill off the animals, and then he ends up getting, as a thank you gift, this female specimen, and well, possibly he starts to have feelings towards her. This is a book that involves a very, very toxic relationship because it is obviously very one-sided and is not really a relationship at all. So I'm definitely putting this one in a little bit or a lot tongue-in-cheek, but it's definitely a really messed up book. And of course, if you can't tell from that messed up synopsis, this book has tons of content warnings. It's very dark, very gruesome, very disturbing. And I should say, like, it's got a very grim tone to it, so it's not really fun, but if you can handle it, it's very well written, it's very thoughtful, it will really make you explore and think about your own consumption habits when it comes to meat, and this is coming from someone who is an omnivore, but it certainly is a compelling read. And yeah, the scenes between these two characters are oh so uncomfortable and will just make you squirm and just scream for some consent to happen in this situation, and it's really messed up, and another perfect book to read today. Now, I do predominantly want to keep this video focused on horror and thrillers, but I did want to sneak in at least one or two fantasy books that really fit the bill. And so I feel like we can't talk about toxic relationships without talking about A Game of Thrones or the whole series, A Song of Ice and Fire, all by George R. R. Martin. And even if you haven't read the books, you've probably seen the TV show. and I think you'll agree that there is more than one toxic relationship within this series. So I don't want to give away too much in case you somehow are unfamiliar with this, but you have a incest relationship, or at least one, possibly two of those, and then you also have a person who is sold off into a marriage against their will, and you have other people being, again, kind of given to people in places of power and so forth. Like, is there any consensual, non-toxic relationships happening within this story? Please let me know. So I'd love to hear in the comments, of all the relationships that take place within this book, are any of them actually healthy in your opinion? And of the toxic ones, which are the worst? So let's keep it spoiler free, but we can kind of talk in generalities and keep it fun. Now, if we're gonna talk toxic relationships, I should probably throw Twilight by Stephenie Perkins into the mix. And yes, this is that classic fantasy YA story that everyone knows about, so I'll keep the synopsis basically short, saying it's a teenage vampire romance. But I want to mention it here because it really fits the bill. I do predominantly read adult fiction, but I'll admit at the time it came out, I was still reading some YA, and you know what? I was a teenager, and at the time I read it, I remember this book being so romantic. I wanted to be Bella. I wanted Edward to sparkle in the sun for me and watch me while I slept. I thought that was like the ultimate relationship. And of course, looking back now a little bit older, I now see how completely dysfunctional, messed up that relationship actually is. And it's actually really funny. I would love to actually go back at some point and reread it and see if it's as terrible as I remember it. Because yeah, at the time I thought it was brilliant. And then looking back later, it was like, oh my gosh, why did I think this was a functional relationship? So yes, I mostly talk adult fiction on my channel, but I thought this was a good excuse to talk about an oldie that is really, really toxic. Next, let's talk about You by Caroline Kepnes, which is a really fun thriller story that is told in a second person perspective. So we are told the story from the perspective of Joe, who is this charming bookseller who finds a girl that wanders into his bookstore. He becomes obsessed with her and, well, decides to stalk her. Now, this book almost breaks my rule for this video because I didn't want to include a bunch of stalker stories, because technically I did that as a previous Valentine's video, which again will be linked down below. But I want to include this one because technically after stalking her, they do get together, and it's not really a spoiler, it's very early on, they go on some dates. And well, I definitely think it counts as a toxic relationship if you end up accidentally dating someone who is stalking you. And of course, if you know the TV show or have read the book, you know that things go terribly wrong, as you would expect if it's on this list. So definitely recommend that one as well. It's so much fun, and definitely recommend the audiobook version because the narration really brings the story to life. Joe is just so deadpan and full of satire, and I just love getting to read the story from his perspective because through his warped mind, he sees things totally different than you would see them from the outside, which makes it oh so fun because he doesn't know he's in a toxic relationship. He doesn't know that he is the toxic one. So definitely recommend that one if you haven't checked it out before. Now let's talk about My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, and this is a thriller book that follows a husband and wife whose marriage is kind of getting boring until they decide to start murdering people together. This story is told over dual perspectives, and it's one that, yes, does require a little bit of suspension of disbelief to get started, but I was actually pleasantly surprised how much fun this book was. It had some good twists and turns that I didn't see coming, and in a lot of ways I think this synopsis kind of gives away the fact that this relationship must be, to a degree, toxic in order to get to this point. If you and your husband or you and your spouse are going around and murdering people in your free time in order to keep your marriage spicy, I don't want to know. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that your relationship is really messed up if it's gotten to that point. So I don't want to give away the twists and turns themselves, but regardless, you can know that this book is about two very disturbed people. And I thought it was really fun, really fast paced, easy to fly through, and definitely just an enjoyable read, and hopefully something you'll enjoy as well. And I also want to talk about Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. And this is a thriller that follows a woman who gets a job as a receptionist or admin for this really powerful, handsome man. And she is pretending to be someone that she is not in order to try to entice him and just pull him into a relationship. But really you find out that there is an underlying plot for revenge, and this woman has this crazy plan to try to entice him only to fulfill her crazy revenge scheme. And I don't want to give away too much. I can't remember how much is on the back of the book, but it's one of these setups where the relationship is just built on a house of cards. You know that things cannot go well when people go into a relationship full of lies and deceit and are just looking to bring the other person down. It's not really a relationship, is it, at that point? But yeah, if you've ever been cheated on or just wanted to get back at someone who's done you wrong, I think that this book is really fun and fierce. And the main character is not per se a sociopath, but she's very deadpan and very determined to get done what she needs to. So there's very little romance in this book, and it's more the thrills than the romance side of things. So definitely one that I thought was really fun, easy to get through, and another one that's good on audio. And I have one more young adult book to mention, but this one is definitely worth your time, even if you, like me, prefer adult fiction, and that is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White. And this is a YA horror book that is a retelling of Frankenstein from the perspective of Elizabeth. In this story, she has kind of been adopted by Victor's family, and so she is like a pseudo sister to him, but of course they don't actually share any blood. And at the beginning of the story, he has gone away, and so she is trying to track him down and find out what he's up to. Now, this is to me the epitome of a subtle, quiet, toxic relationship, because not only do they have this strange familiar bond where they're almost more like siblings, but she is just enamored by him, and you get to follow them not even in the present day but also as children and how they live together. And she really tried to protect Victor from his own instincts and desires and all of that, and you just see the beginnings of his mind. And so this book is really about a woman who is just entranced by a man who himself is just toxic, and then the relationship is completely one-sided and toxic in and of itself. And I just thought the character work in this was so well done. And again, I do not love young adult books, and this is one of my all-time favorites. I think it is so well done, and easily, with a different cover with a longer page count, this easily could have been shelved as adult literature. It is so mature, so disturbing, and yeah, if you want a toxic relationship that is really well developed, I think this is one of the best on this list, and one that I definitely recommend. I love this book so much. And finally, I want to talk about Heartsick by Chelsea Cain, and this is a thriller story that follows a police officer named Archie who is involved in investigating a case where there is a serial killer on the loose. He ends up tracking her down, but she ends up capturing him and then proceeds to torture him and is about to kill him, but he is able to plead with her, and she actually agrees to let him go, so she helps to keep him alive when the ambulance is coming and the paramedics. And because of that, she's actually captured and goes off to jail. And then the story takes place in the present day, where there is another case that is causing Archie to have to go back on the force and revisit this case. And so you find out that because of this whole incident, he's really messed up, because this is basically the epitome of a toxic relationship, because somehow they have this strange connection where you have this entirely messed up, detached, sociopathic woman who for some reason forms a bond with this man, and they have, I don't even want to call it a romance, it is not a romance, but they have a connection. And because of that connection, he cannot get past what happened, and they just kind of dance around each other. And so I will admit, this book is not great in terms of other things like plot, storytelling, prose. I would not recommend this book if you're looking for a fine piece of literature. But if you are looking for a fascinating, messed up relationship at the core of the story, and something that I haven't seen written like this in other places, it's a fantastic exploration of a really toxic situation. So it's perfect for this video. Not a perfect book, but really fun, really easy to fly through. And if you're interested in something like that, this is a great messed up relationship to check out on this lovely old holiday. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to hear of the books I talked about. Which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And I would also love to hear what are some recommendations for your favorite books with toxic and messed up relationships. Hopefully you're having a good day and a good week regardless of your own relationship status, and just know that all of this Valentine's Day mumbo jumbo is all just marketing, and it's really silly. So even though I am married, honestly, I'm just gonna have a really low-key day myself, I'm sure. So all that being said, if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy, as well as true crime. And if you want to help me out with this video, you can give me a thumbs up if you also agree that Valentine's Day is a little overrated. And if you want to drop a comment, you can drop some thoughts or just a little emoji like a heart. And if you want to help me out more, you can hit that little notification bell. That way you'll never miss another video. And if you're still around, thank you so much. Have a good one. Happy Valentine's Day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.